How you doing? Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is there. This is Steve Sims, and welcome back to another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen, the podcast. So we got a gentleman that sold a very successful business in the fashion industry and now very openly talks about fuck-ups. He owns a funding company in the UK. Interesting cat, but I love the fact that he's not shy of the screw-ups that all entrepreneurs make. And I say all entrepreneurs because you know you're a fuck-up. And he very simply brings it forward so that he can talk about how it actually happened, what you learned from that, and how those people that screw-ups aren't to be trusted. Listen to the way he puts it. It's Stephen Sachs, a UK boy. You're going to enjoy the episode. Listen on. Hey, Stephen, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
So it's nice to have someone on the show that's got the same kind of weird accent as I am, but it's not so weird when you're in the UK. Tell us where you actually are now.
So I'm based in northwest London, Steve.
There you go. There you go. So for any of us Americans, any of the Americans out there listening to this, there are other people that have the same accent as me. So you were a very interesting person that was introduced to me because you've been very successful within the fashion industry. You had a leather company that I believe was sold in over 30 countries, generating $30 million a year in revenue before being acquired. But you focus quite heavily on the fuck-ups from failures within business. Why do you focus on those?
Because it's a point of difference. I think that everybody's talking about success. Everybody's got an elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is always aspirational and tends to be, "Hi, I'm Stephen. I'm running a very successful business in XYZ, and these are the reasons why you need to be doing some business with me." You know, if we get to know each other really well over a period of time, ultimately over drinks, I might tell you about the way that I fucked up, and you might tell me about the way that you fucked up. And that's kind of when we really get to know each other. And of course, that's where all the learning is. So I'm really interested in cutting the crap and moving straight to the fuck ups, because I think that that's where the really, really sort of deep learning and relationship building actually happens. And that's where, that's a sort of bullshit free zone. And I think that otherwise there's just too much bullshit going on.
Now that's nothing new. You know, everybody in the planet has screwed up. But why do you think we're so terrified to actually bring it up and talk about it?
Well, because I think that it exposes us. It makes us feel vulnerable. Everybody else, is talking themselves up. So, to go in and say, "Oh, actually, I haven't done very well in that area. I fucked up," is you're just afraid that people are going to laugh at you and think that you're a bit of a joke. But, investors and specifically investors based close to where you are, Steve, in Silicon Valley, they won't really, one of the questions they'll ask in an investment meeting is, tell us about your fuck-ups. Tell us about a time when you did something really, really badly and how you got out of that. And if you can't reference something which went wrong, then either you're lying or you're really lacking experience, and they don't want that first fuck up to be on their check, right? So you're probably unlikely to get funded. It's people like that sort of the sort of genuine stories, and TED Talks and TEDx and YouTube is just full of people talking about success, and very, very few people talking genuinely about where the real learning is, which is in failure.
Now, you have a funding organization. What is the name of that corporation?
It's called Funding Nav, NAV.
And is there a website for this?
Yes, it's fundingnav.com.
All right, so we're going to go back to that in a second and find out how that transaction is. But what really kind of caught me and made me chuckle a bit was you actually have a event where you actually get together, and it's called Fuck Up Nights.
That's correct. And I didn't invent it either. It's actually a Mexican thing, as it happens.
Really? Tell us how that came about.
Well, it came about. It started in Mexico City about 10 years ago. 5 guys sitting around talking over a few drinks, and then working out that all of the learning and the sort of like deep relationship building came from talking about failure. And so they started doing these fuck up nights. Now it's they license it in, I think, 300 cities in the world, including quite a number of places in the United States. And I've licensed it in London. So it's not my idea. And I think that there's a number of sort of large corporations that sort of invite them in to talk, to talk to their staff and to try and create more honest conversations between people. I mean, is it Facebook, Meta now, which say Mark Zuckerberg says move fast and break things. Which is fine if you break them once. You don't want to keep breaking things. You kind of want to break it once. You want to talk about it, learn about it, and then don't break those things again. Go and break other things and keep doing that. And so we run events in London. We've done 2 in the last month, but generally we do 4 a year. And we invite, I have to find 4 people who have got some really great stories. The stories are kind of come in 3 sections. The first bit is what you were doing before, what your life looked like before. The second bit is the fuck up in granular detail, like a slow motion part of a film, how it felt, the moment that you realized that things were going up and it was going to go very, very badly. And then what happened afterwards. So the 3 things you learn from that. What we're not interested in is the normal narrative that you'll find all over sort of TED Talks, which is the 4th bit, which is, and now I'm a huge success because of all these things. We're not interested in that. We're like Alcoholics Anonymous, where we finish with a bit that even if you haven't drunk for 10 years, I'm an alcoholic. If you're in business, you've basically fucked up. So just leave it at that. Let everybody learn from that, and then we'll all move on together.
Does any of it surprise you? Do you get these conversations and you go, oh, my God, I never thought I could fail in that area? Or do you find that there's a consistent theme through all of these?
Yeah, and the consistent theme, you will not be unsurprised to learn, is around surrounding yourself with the right people. That, I would say, 75 to 85% of all the stories are basically, if I did that again, I would surround myself with better people. I wasn't properly advised. I didn't, if we had a stronger board, better directors, other executives, not all of them. Some of them are just bad luck. Timing. Obviously, there's quite a lot of stuff around the pandemic. People where things just didn't work. But a lot of stuff is poor management. A lot.
Now, you were in the fashion industry for a long time. You developed a leather. Well, tell us about that business. And the question I'm going to lead into is you sold it. When you've got a successful business that you've sold for an excessive amount of money, you kind of want to kind of like ignore and brush under the carpet all of the shit that happened before and kind of live that crescendo of the movie. Oh, I fucked up, but now I'm okay. You actually went back into, so I'd like to hear, what was it like building the leather industry, selling out, and then what actually made you click into the failure realm?
So I didn't really click into the failure realm. I clicked into the funding industry. So I over time, as I got older, I started to like that business less and less. And what gave me a thrill at the beginning, I got kind of tired of it. There was an excessive amount of travel in that business. I used to love the travel. I used to love meeting people from different countries. I was on nodding terms with the guys on customs at Heathrow Airport for quite a long time, because I was going through there once, twice a week, going to various places. And after a bit, I kind of realized that I was just going through the motions. So I would turn up somewhere, do the business, and then rather than do the social stuff, and the fashion industry is a social industry, I would just go back to my room and do some emails, go to bed. I just couldn't be asked for all that. And then I thought, actually, this is not really what I should be doing. I should be kind of doing something I'm really engaged in. And then I reflected. It was over the Christmas of 2016. I thought about it, and I thought, what really excites me, and what really excited me was deals, transactions, specifically around funding, specifically around sales and marketing. And when we bought something or sold something, I kind of came to life, and I thought, wow, this is I can really make a difference here. Not only was it the most satisfying for me from a sort of emotional perspective, but also from a financial perspective. And when the business went back to normal again, like we'd done that deal, and you're just dealing with the day-to-day challenges of running a business. I just got bored of that. So I decided I needed to exit it. I needed to move on and do something else. I spent around about a year in 2017, literally just going to every single networking event that I could in London, not really knowing what it was. And then I kind of started to realize that there was a gap for offering businesses commercial funding advice from an entrepreneurial perspective. There's lots of retired bank managers, lots of retired accountants, active accountants in this kind of area. But through the experience that I'd had, I was able to offer more kind of commercial experience. I was able to empathize better with business owners. And I started to do that, and that became quite successful. And then I wrote a book about it called Reboot Your Business. Then I wrote a second book, actually, the following year, called The Intelligent Investor's Handbook, approaching it from a different perspective. Then I got a number of different partners attracted to me. I got about 18 partners like doing something similar. And we expanded into, we took back office teams in Africa and in Asia. And so, yeah, it just grew from there. And then the fuck up thing, honestly, is a fun thing, which I've started more recently as a way of generating interesting conversations that ultimately is fun and also leads to general learning. And also the people that I find are interested in that are ready to start another funding journey. So we build a lot of trust, and then often they become quite valuable clients to me.
I remember going into a party. It was actually in London, and I was with a very successful entrepreneur. And as we got out of the elevator and we saw the crowd in the social room, he turned around and he went, "Great, it's a room full of failures." And I remember at the time going, "Oh shit, that's not very nice." And he looked at me and he went, No. Everyone in here has failed, and they wear it with pride, and it's allowed them to be refined, not defined." Yeah. And I was like, whoa, okay, I quite like that. But he literally saw the room as a lot of people that recognized that things weren't working and pivoted. Do you think by having that whole fuck up nights and being very vocal about the mistakes we make and the educational gains gets people off of the ego lip a little bit and kind of gets them to relax a little bit and go, okay, this is a person that knows what's going on because he acknowledges that every business fails at one place or another?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. It's an entirely different and deeper form of networking. So what I do is after we've had these 4 stories and there's been a bit of Q&A, I encourage networking. Often I'll ask people to write on sort of Post-it notes, generally anonymously, their biggest fuck up, put it on the wall. People read those, and that's kind of interesting. And then I ask people to say, look, turn to the person next to you, introduce yourself, tell them what your favorite ice cream is, and then just tell them what your biggest fuck up is, or ask them what their biggest fuck up is. And honestly, we have to kick people out at the end of There's a lot of beer actually consumed during this process. But at the end of the evening, we have to kick people out. I mean, honestly, people would stay till like all night because everybody gets a lot out of that and continues talking at a very deep level for a long period of time.
How do people find out about this event?
Through LinkedIn, through I work in collaboration with networking groups. Like I belong to a club in London, all of their members, people who are linked in with me, other organizations that I kind of belong to. So yeah, we just put it around, but it's specifically in London. But as I say, there are, if you look at Up Nights, there's a website, and there's a series of international events in the US, in South America, in Europe, all over, in Asia. I saw it in Hong Kong. it's all over. As I say, it's 300 cities around the world. I dare say it's in Los Angeles if you have a look, Steve.
Well, I would imagine this is probably the capital of them because there's a lot of fuck-ups here. So how's the best way for people to actually follow you? You mentioned LinkedIn. Do you have a big social presence?
Yeah, I've got around 25,000 people that follow me on LinkedIn.
So and what are you, Stephen Sachs, or do you have different names?
No, it's Stephen Sachs. Yeah, if they just search me Stephen Sachs, they'll find me.
All right, okay, good. All right, so we'll put the social links in there so you can find the guy. He's obviously got a very similar hairdo to me, so he's a very stylish gentleman. So you'll be able to find out. I want to flip now into the funding. Yeah. What excites you when you're looking at a deal to fund it? And you fund predominantly in the UK, but what kind of arouses you when you start looking at the details?
So generally speaking, people come to us because money is a bottleneck in their business. It's keeping them up at night for some reason. That might be because they're growing quickly and they need more working capital. It might be they want to make some kind of acquisition. It might be that things are going very badly and they're losing money. They may not even know that that's actually happening. There might be a sort of step change. They might want to buy somebody out, to a management buyout. There could be 10 different reasons for that. And they generally have a solution in their heads, and generally it's the wrong solution. What I find is that younger people are completely focused on equity raising and kind of never really think that through, never think through the implications of selling your business or bits of your business today, what that actually costs in the long term, and just think about, sort of seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, and so on and so forth. And they don't give enough thought to getting the customer to pay for something, getting money in from the punter. And funding of any type is a kind of failure in itself, because of course, if you have a properly resourced business, then it should be self-sustaining, right? Some businesses start with nothing and they go on to be huge successes. There's very little capital put in at the beginning. Nowadays, of course, with technology, the barriers to entry can be quite high, and you need to make a lot of investment before you actually get anywhere. And that's why you get this whole sort of crazy valuation type thing. And I get a lot of interesting conversations, difference between value investors and sort of growth investors. And so I was having a drink once with a value investor and a growth investor, people in my network, and the value investor honestly thinks Uber is worth $1 because it's never made money. It may never make any money, and therefore, what's the point of it? It's sort of rather like actually to think of a business very similar to that that's in the media at the moment that we're being taken over, of course, is Twitter. $44 billion deal for a business that's hemorrhaging money, maybe will never make any money. Arguably, I mean, what I know somebody was maybe stupid enough, or maybe clever enough. Who knows? I mean, he's obviously a clever guy, right? To buy that, but it's just an incredible valuation, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to normal people, and it'd be fascinating to see over time how that actually plays out. But I see that sort of story on a smaller basis all the time. People trying to apply crazy valuations on the basis of all sorts of sort of different concepts. But now I think the sea's going out, and we'll see who's actually wearing any swimming costumes or not. Who's really naked, because there's definitely less money. People are supporting their existing investments rather than looking for new stuff right now. And businesses need to be sustainable in order to succeed right now. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating, I think, over the next year or so, and I think there could be some really high-profile failures, and they will obviously be opportunities too in due course. So yeah, it's what. Just going back to your original question. Sorry, I've been around the houses here a bit. Is I suppose what really gets me going is coming up with solutions which the entrepreneur and the business owners didn't think were possible, and a lot of that is either free money through grants, through tax credits, through different ways of monetizing what they've actually got, through debt, and not through equity, because I think that equity investment can be a huge diversion for businesses, and can be massively expensive. So that's kind of always the last place to go, in my opinion.
That's the second time you've actually looked at equity investors as almost a bad idea. When someone's raising money for their company and they're very, very new, they're in their infancy, and they're thinking, oh, I need to raise money for my company. The first thing they do is they think, I've got to sell equity. Are there other ways of doing it without selling equity?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of, I mean, I don't know about in the US, but although I would imagine that it's similar. But we've got a very, certainly in Europe and in the United Kingdom, we've got a very developed, we've got around 8,000 grants available to businesses. We've got research development tax credits. We've got, well, I mean, obviously we've got platforms like, sort of crowdfunding type platforms around sales, and also around equity raising. So yeah, there are different ways of doing it. We've also got startup business loans. So yeah, there are, but I do get that at a very early stage, then sometimes equity is unavoidable.
Right. Okay. I noticed something that you've been saying that we haven't actually bringing attention to, that we're always very clear. It really matters on the conversations you're having. And when, every entrepreneur thinks that they're doing something until they get into a room to realize that everyone's sharing the same problem. When did you realize that it was smart for you to be in a room? And you've already mentioned I'm a member of these different clubs and I joined these. Was that pivotal for you to suddenly realize, hey, I need to change the room I'm in, or at minimum, I need to be in a room where I can actually converse with other people that have been through things very similar to me?
Yeah. So it's interesting today. Funny enough, I was with a client that I raised quite a lot of money for. That's a distribution business, and I bought into them a potential investor who's a friend of mine who I know through a networking organization. So this guy, these guys who have got this business, they're 3 school friends, all in their 30s now. And this business is, their revenue is around about 7 to 8 million pounds. So say about $10 million. The guy I bought in, the business that him and his 2 friends that also knew each other before, there's a lot of similarities actually. And they're now in their late 50s, early 60s. Their business, which has been sold 2 or 3 times now, is now owned by private equity. Turnover is £2.5 billion, so $3 billion. Not a dissimilar business. And one of the biggest things that was clearly lacking from the younger guys was the fact that was their network. So the guy who's 58 was saying, look, I do lots of networking. I've got a big network of people that I know, and as such, I've got, like I always have in the business I invest in, like a big pipeline of potential people to sell to. So where's your pipeline? And it was obvious that their pipeline was insufficient. And that was the biggest thing that actually came out of that meeting, was that, I think they came away from that thinking, we really need to build our pipeline here. And I think that he may well invest in the business, and then he may well help them with that. But yeah, the secret to his success, and I say it's a huge success, has been networking, belonging to organizations, and just being out there, meeting people, and generally working that network.
And that's not expensive. Okay, some memberships, can cost a little bit of money, but networking and getting yourself out there, that's effort. And a lot of people would rather throw money at something and not actually put the effort into it. But networking, really, you can go to a lot of openers. You can go, and most events and most networking groups will allow like a first day free to just see what it's like. So as long as the effort's there, you can very, very quickly build up your network if you know how to network properly.
You're absolutely right. And I think that one of the key things you need to do, and this is just not just real networking, but also virtual networking on LinkedIn, is follow up quickly with a kind of more in-depth one-to-one, rather like we're having here. I mean, hopefully face-to-face. Obviously, that's quite difficult for us given the fact that we're continents away from each other. But yeah, what I try and do is, following meeting somebody at an event, is say, let's go out for a coffee, and then get into some depth around what it is they've done. Hopefully talk to them about their fuck-ups, because obviously I've got a big interest in that. And see how we might benefit each other, not what they can do for me. I think one of your presidents said that, didn't he, in America? Ask what you can do for them. Yeah. Because that's the best way, I think, of getting real value for you both.
So when's the book coming out, The Fuck Ups? It just seems right that it's there for you to do.
I agree with you. I think I need to give that, because I'm coming out with tons and tons of really great. The book could write itself, actually. I mean, one of my favorite stories that I've been involved with recently is somebody's a friend of mine who his fuck up was enormous, and actually resulted in him going to prison for 6 years for effectively creating a Ponzi scheme for investors. Not something he intended to do at the outset, but something that he kind of wound up in. And it's something that he's kind of, he's got his hands up and says that's what happened. And it's like, when people hear stories like that, it's sort of, wow, that's bigger than any fuck up I've ever done. It's a huge fuck up. And it's great that he can talk about it now. And it was difficult for him to talk about it at the beginning, but now he loves talking about it. And people love hearing about it. And yeah, that's a chapter in a book that I kind of really don't need to write, and I've got loads of others, similarly. So yeah, I could knock that book up in about 5 minutes flat, I reckon, Steve.
Let me know when it comes out. I'd like to see that. I want a signed copy. All right, so we know how to follow you on social as Stephen Sacks, SACKS. We're going to put these links in. We're going to put the links in about your book. Again, your funding group. Now, that's a UK-based. How do they best get in touch with you through that?
Yeah, so again, if you go to the fundingnav.com website, then there are inquiry forms, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about their funding for their business. And, if it's not something we can help with, then I'll definitely point them in the right direction.
I appreciate it, Stephen. Stephen, thank you very much for being a guest on the show today. You've been fun and you've been enlightening. I love the whole essence around the fuck-ups. I'm going to look up the fuck-up nights and see if they got any close to me. But thank you very much for being on the Art of Making Things Happen podcast.
Thank you so much, Steve. Great talking to you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode of the Art of Making Things Happen podcast. And remember, these are done for you. If you like them, subscribe, share them around. But if you don't like them, send me an email to ask@stevedsims.com, and you can tell me what I need to do to make this the most dynamic podcast you listen to. Anyway, make sure whatever you learned from the last podcast, you actually do something with. Without action, it's just a bunch of people blowing air. Have a good time. Until next time. Bye.